Christopher Knight, who was 20 years old, worked in the suburbs of Boston. One day, as usual, after his working day, he left his office. He got into his car, started the engine, and hit the road. He rode on and on. He did not think of direction or time. Christopher had already driven out of town, but he still did not stop. Several hours passed, and the car ran out of gas. Then, without hesitation, he left the car on the side of the road, got out of it, and purposefully moved along the forest path. He walked for almost an hour. Only then did he finally stop, take out a tent from his backpack, and set it up in the forest. Believe it or not, he stayed there, and he spent exactly 27 years in his tent. Hello, friends. Do you want to know what made this young man give up everything and live in the forest all alone? Then listen to this amazing story. Christopher Knight lived with his family in the U.S. state of Maine. His parents were nice and decent people, and their son was brought up the same kind of person. Having matured, he got a job. He had to go to the suburbs of Boston. In his 20s, Christopher was an alarm system installer. On one ordinary day in 1986, after work, he took money out of his account and went somewhere in his car without even explaining to anyone where and why he was going. He was so absorbed in his thoughts that he even forgot to return his work tools. Chris did not have a clear plan. He just drove and drove to the south side of America. He had been on the road for several days. To have some food, he went to roadside cafes and spent the night in cheap hotels. After covering nearly 1,300 miles, he reached Florida. But Christopher did not stay there. Having made such a long journey, he simply turned the car around and went the opposite direction to the north. Christopher decided to go to Maine, where he spent his happy childhood. He traveled many more miles, and now in front of him there was his childhood home with so many memories. You would be surprised, but even here he did not stop his car. Passing by, he only slowed down a little and looked around the house. Perhaps in this way he said goodbye to his past, which was so dear to his heart. And here before him there were again endless roads leading to the north. Now he was already crossing the border to Canada. After driving a few more miles, he saw that Musket Lake could be seen in the distance. Christopher wanted to hide in some remote place far, far away. First, he turned onto a country road and then completely onto a forest path, and then he drove off-road, following a track made by off-road vehicles. The car could go no further. Then he got out of his car and kept going. He had no specific goal or idea. His legs just carried him somewhere forward. Knight carried a backpack on his shoulders. In it, there were simple belongings, clothes, and some supplies. He did not take a map or a compass with him. He moved along, looking closely at the trees. Chris supposed he was heading south. Many years later, he recalled that some unknown force was leading him there. This happens with animals who have wandered far from their habitat and then following their instincts can return home. Christopher walked through swamps, overgrown slopes, made his way through thickets and riverbanks. For several days, he stayed for some time at one place or another, but then, driven by incomprehensible feelings, again and again walked forward to the south. I got lost and did not understand where I was at all, but it did not frighten me at all. I made a decision and was proud to follow it, Christopher Knight later shared in an interview with local journalists. What was really difficult for him was to get food. He ate the food from his backpack at the very beginning, and later hunger overtook him more and more often. Of course, he could find fish in the rivers and game animals in the thicket, but Chris, who by the way knew how to hunt and fish, never managed to get food by his own hands without having a gun or a fishing rod. But even hunger did not frighten him and did not make him abandon his decision, and Christopher stubbornly continued walking on through the thickets and windbreaks. But then a miracle happened. He saw a road covered with asphalt where there was a partridge. Probably hunters had shot her down with a gun and couldn't find her. The man did not have any matches, which meant he could not make a fire to roast the game. But his hunger was so strong that he started eating his unexpected prey raw. Soon, Chris found a small village. He stood near the houses staring at their vegetable gardens, but his good conscience would not allow him to enter someone else's territory and take anything. However, after hesitating for several minutes, he nevertheless went to one of the vegetable gardens. 10 days without food made him do it. There, he pulled out one bush of potatoes from the ground, and in another area, he picked several cucumbers and tomatoes and went on. Once he thought he could stay for the night in an abandoned house on the edge of the village, but he never closed his eyes because he was afraid that people would find him. Later, Chris said that was the worst night of his life. Christopher walked further through the woods. Every day he looked for a good place where he could put up a tent, and after 2 or 3 months, he saw something suitable. It was the wilderness where not a single living soul had looked. Chris pitched his tent behind the trees and huge rocks. Here he would spend 27 years of his life. But he never learned how to get his own food, so he began to get out of the wilderness and steal from homes and recreation centers. For such adventures, he thoroughly prepared. At first, he would watch the house for a couple of days, noted when the owners were usually out, and then he took advantage of the moment and went inside. Chris never climbed into the houses where people lived all the time, only summer houses where people came from the city for a weekend. As a rule, he went out to hunt at night. He took out food that could be stored for a while and the necessary little things like batteries for his radio to work and cylinders for cooking. It is absolutely incredible, but the character of our story never made a fire in the forest. He had not done so in 27 years. So strong was the fear that someone would find him. He also camouflaged his camp from helicopters and airplanes so that he would not be seen from above. In order to do this, Chris covered all of his shiny objects with dirt and moss so that they would not create bright sun glare. In order to get into other people's houses, he opened locks with the help of tools which were once taken from his work. When Christopher left, he closed the doors and windows just as they had been before he came. He took care not to leave traces and to not accidentally get into the view of their cameras. And sometimes he just had to pull out the memory cards from those cameras. Many years later, the police said that this thief was distinguished by great accuracy and even politeness, so to speak. They also said that he had some kind of incredible ability to pick locks. Residents of the houses where Christopher Knight visited from time to time soon realized that the mysterious robber came to them only for food. Then they began to put food in bags and leave it at the doorstep. And someone, even for the sake of laughter, put in a list with which they would go to the store for him into their package. Every meal trip turned into a stressful situation for the man. He admitted that he felt worse than ever. Something was throbbing in his head, the pressure was increasing, his heart was jumping out of his chest. Each time he felt wild terror and tried to act as quickly as possible to return to his safe place. The man was caught on April 4th, 2013. He was grabbed by a local forest ranger named Terry Hughes. For several years, he hunted the mysterious night thief. The man installed cameras equipped with a motion sensor on the territory of one of the tourist bases. Thanks to this, Terry caught the character of our story red-handed when he was once again taking food from one of the houses. Knight was accused of 1,000 thefts, and then some. He managed to do so much during his years of hermitage in the forest, but the punishment was not so severe. The court sentenced him to 7 months in prison and a $1,500 fine. Considering his case, the woman judge emphasized that Knight committed thefts to stay alive. He simply did not see any other way out. Also, the man was assigned 3 years of rehabilitation. After that, according to the judge, the man would never steal again. Many journalists approached Christopher. They really wanted to know the details of his life in the forest, but he agreed to only give one interview. What made him, when he was still a boy, leave civilization and doom himself to years of loneliness? Even Christopher himself could not answer this question. He only admitted that he constantly thought about it, but could not find any answer. The state of loneliness intensified all my feelings, Knight said later, but when they intensified, I stopped seeing my individuality and seemed to have lost the meaning of life. There was not a soul around with whom I could share. I felt lost. I had no desires, no thoughts, not even a name. Are you interested in this story? Write your comments and click like. Bye-bye.